Snow hammers the mountain like a verdict. On a forgotten road, a Navy SEAL on forced leave hears a sound the storm was meant to erase. Not wind, not metal, but a cry. Beneath a twisted pine, a puppy shivers inside a broken crate, too small to fight, too weak to matter. A frayed rope circles its neck like a final decision already made. This soldier has followed orders his whole life, orders that once told him to leave someone behind. Tonight, the mountain is watching. The storm is closing in, and one choice will decide whether two discarded lives disappear or become evidence that miracles still happen in silence. What happens next will make you believe that sometimes the ones who save us walk on four legs. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments below. And if you believe no soul, human or animal, should ever be left behind, subscribe now and share this story with someone who needs hope. The blizzard came down like a final judgment. Snow didn't fall gently. It pressed, heavy and relentless, swallowing roads, sound, and every trace of life that had dared to exist before it. A gray pickup truck crawled along the mountain road. Inside sat a Navy SEAL, hands steady on the wheel, radio off, silence thick in the cab. His eyes stayed on the white void ahead. His mind was somewhere else entirely. He was on mandatory leave. Not because his body had failed, but because his mind had been labeled unstable. The wind howled like rotor blades from another life. Snow struck the windshield like fragments of memory. He slowed, pulled over, no signs, no houses, only ancient pines and a silence so deep it felt alive. Then, a sound slipped through the storm, not metal, not an animal's call, but a cry, small, broken, as if it had been crying for a long time and was running out of strength to continue. His body moved before thought. The door opened, cold air cut into his face like a thin blade. Boots sank deep into snow, but his steps did not hesitate. He followed the sound down a short slope. It came again, weaker now, almost apologetic for existing. At the base of a bent old pine, he saw a broken wooden crate. Inside was a puppy, too small, fur matted with snow and mud, a body shaking in uncontrollable waves. Its eyes were wide, dark, glassy, filled with the most ancient fear there is, the fear of being left behind. It didn't bark, didn't growl, only released a thin, trembling whimper that barely escaped its chest. The SEAL dropped to one knee, snow soaked through his pants, burning cold, but he didn't feel it. He had knelt like this before, beside men who would never stand again, at moments when orders told him to move on. The puppy stared at him, unblinking. It didn't understand uniforms, or medals, or rank. It understood only this: the man in front of it would either walk away or stay. He removed his gloves slowly. His hands were scarred, rough, hands shaped by war. But as they touched the puppy's small, fragile body, they trembled. "It's okay," he whispered, voice hoarse from disuse. "I've got you." The puppy shifted. With the last of its strength, it pressed its freezing head against his chest. In the middle of the storm, in a world that had turned its back on them both, two discarded lives found each other. And in that quiet moment, a decision was made, a decision that would change everything. The storm did not pause for mercy. Snow kept falling, as if the mountain itself had decided that whatever was weak did not deserve to remain. The wind pushed at the SEAL's back while he cradled the puppy inside his jacket, its tiny body pressed against his chest, light as something unfinished. The puppy did not struggle, it did not whine, it simply stayed. The man adjusted his grip instinctively, the same way he once carried wounded teammates off shattered ground. His arms remembered what his mind tried to forget. Some weights were not burdens, some were promises. By the time he reached the truck, his breath was shallow and burning. He opened the door, shielding the puppy from the wind with his body, and set it gently on the passenger seat, wrapping it in a spare thermal blanket. The puppy's shaking slowed, just slightly, enough to matter. The engine turned over, low and steady. Warm air crept back into the cab. Outside, the blizzard continued its assault, but inside the truck, something fragile began to hold. The SEAL sat there longer than necessary, one hand resting on the blanket, feeling the faint rise and fall beneath it. Alive. The word echoed in him like a command he had once forgotten how to obey. He studied the puppy more closely now. Its paws were too large for its body, a quiet promise of growth, A thin cord of frayed rope still hung loosely around its neck. Cheap, careless, functional. Not meant to guide, only to restrain. He had seen this kind of logic before. Reduce a living thing to risk, measure worth by convenience, leave behind what complicates the mission. His jaw tightened. "You didn't fail," he said quietly, unsure why he needed to say it out loud. "They failed you." The puppy stirred at the sound of his voice. One eye cracked open, clouded with exhaustion, but watching him. Not pleading, just checking, as if asking whether this warmth would disappear too. The truck eased back onto the road, tires grinding through fresh snow. The forest closed in around them, tall and indifferent. Pines blurred past like sentinels who had seen this story repeat itself for centuries. The seal's thoughts drifted, pulled backward against his will. A canyon, dust in the air, a radio screaming orders he didn't want to hear. Pull back, leave him. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. The puppy let out a soft sound, not fear, not pain, just presence. The man exhaled, sharp and shaky, and forced his attention back to the road. He focused on what was real, what was now, what was breathing beside him. "I won't do that again," he said. This time, the words were not a promise to the past. They were a vow to the present. The road climbed higher, visibility shrank. Logic whispered that turning back would be safer, smarter, but something in his chest, something long buried under discipline and obedience, refused. He turned onto an unmarked forest road instead, a place few people went, a place that did not ask questions. The cabin waited somewhere ahead, hidden among the trees, a structure left behind by a friend who never made it home, a place meant for disappearing. As the truck pushed deeper into the white, the puppy shifted again, inching closer until its small body leaned against the man's thigh. No training, no command, just instinct recognizing safety. The seal felt it then, a quiet, unsettling truth settling into his bones. This puppy had not been sent to test him. It had not arrived to be saved. It had come to stay. And for the first time since the mission that broke him, the thought did not feel like a burden. It felt like relief. The cabin emerged from the storm like a thought he had tried to forget. Low and dark, half buried in snow, it crouched among the trees as if it did not wish to be found. Smoke did not rise from its chimney. No light greeted them. Just old timber, bowed by years of winter and silence. The seal cut the engine. For a moment, he sat still, listening to the wind drag its fingers across the walls. This place had once been a dream, spoken aloud over cheap coffee and tired laughter by a man who never got to live it. He pushed the door open. Cold rushed inside. The cabin smelled of pine sap, dust, and old smoke, the scent of things that had waited a long time. He carried the puppy in with care, boots thudding softly against the wooden floor. The door shut behind them with a solid, final sound. Inside, the storm became distant. He set the puppy down near the stone fireplace and knelt. The small body trembled again, but less violently now, less like panic, more like fatigue finally allowed to surface. "Easy," he murmured. He worked without hurry. Years of training shaped his movements, efficient, deliberate. He gathered kindling, struck a match. The flame caught slowly, licking at the cold air before settling into something steady. Light spread across the room. It revealed old gear stacked neatly in a corner, a spare chair, a table marked by knife cuts and time. The past did not rush at him here. It simply waited. He removed the frayed rope from the puppy's neck and set it aside, as if it were something dangerous even after it was gone. The puppy watched his hands closely. Trust did not come all at once, but it was trying. He poured water, warmed it, cleaned the puppy's paws one by one. Each touch was gentle, though his hands had learned rougher work. The puppy flinched once, then stilled, as if realizing pain was not coming this time. When he wrapped the puppy in a thick wool blanket, it let out a small sound, half breath, half surrender, and curled in on itself. The fire crackled. Night pressed against the windows, thick and listening. The seal sat back on his heels, suddenly unsure what to do with his hands, with his thoughts, with the space the storm had left behind. He leaned against the wall, boots still on, eyes fixed on the fire. Sleep crept in quietly, the way it always did, without permission. And then the canyon returned. Dust, heat, noise, a man bleeding out beside him, a voice in his headset, calm, distant, final. Leave him, fall back. His chest tightened, breath shortened, his hands curled into fists as the present began to slip. A sound cut through it. Not an explosion, not a command, a soft whine. The puppy stirred near the fire, body stiff with cold and injury. It rose on unsteady legs and took one careful step. Then another. It stopped when its nose reached the seal's boot. There, it pressed its small weight against him. Warm, real, alive. The seal's breath caught. He lowered one shaking hand and rested it on the puppy's back. Coarse fur met scarred skin. The simple contact anchored him. He focused on the rise and fall beneath his palm, matched his breathing to it, slow, then slower. "I'm here," he whispered. He wasn't sure who he was saying it to. The puppy did not move. It stayed. The storm howled outside, rattling the walls, but inside the cabin, something held. The past loosened its grip, not gone, not silenced, but pushed back just enough to breathe. The seal leaned his head against the wall and kept his hand where it was. He did not sleep deeply. He did not need to. For the first time in a long while, he was not alone in the dark, and neither was the puppy. Morning did not arrive with light. It arrived with silence. The storm had moved on sometime before dawn, leaving the mountain buried and breathless, as if the world were holding still to see what survived the night. Pale gray light seeped through the cabin windows, soft and uncertain. The seal rose quietly, joints stiff, mind clearer than it had been in months. He added wood to the fire and checked the puppy before doing anything else. The puppy was awake, curled inside the blanket, eyes following him with careful attention. It lifted its head when he knelt beside it. The trembling was gone now. In its place was something new, hesitation mixed with curiosity. "Well," he said softly, the corner of his mouth lifting despite himself, "you made it." The puppy answered by yawning, wide and clumsy, then promptly losing its balance and tumbling sideways into the blanket. The seal huffed a quiet laugh. The sound surprised them both. He fed the puppy slowly, piece by piece, letting it eat at its own pace. When he opened the cabin door, cold air rolled in, sharp but clean. The mountains stood revealed, scarred by fresh slides, snow piled high along the narrow road. They had to move. The seal wrapped the puppy securely and carried it back to the truck. As he set it down on the seat, the puppy placed one paw on his sleeve, light but deliberate. It stayed there as the engine started. They drove in careful silence, the road winding downward through trees heavy with snow. The seal's eyes scanned instinctively, reading the terrain for threats that did not wear uniforms. Then he saw it, a car, half buried off the shoulder, rear lights blinking weakly through the snow like a failing signal flare. He braked and pulled over without hesitation. Before he could open the door, the puppy stirred. It pushed itself upright, unsteady but intent, nose lifting to the air. A low sound rumbled from its chest, not a bark, but not nothing. The seal paused. "You smell something?" he murmured. The puppy leaned toward the passenger side window, tail stiff, attention locked. The seal grabbed his jacket and stepped out. Cold bit immediately, but adrenaline cut through it. He moved toward the car, calling out. No answer. Then, faint, thin, human. The puppy wriggled free of the blanket and jumped down into the snow, legs wobbling but determined. It moved in short bursts, stopping often, nose buried in powder. The seal followed. The puppy stopped abruptly and let out a sharp, high-pitched bark, its first real one. The sound echoed strangely in the quiet. The seal dropped to his knees and dug, snow packed dense and heavy. His hands burned as he scooped, rhythm settling in, the way it always did when lives were on the line. A small hand appeared, a child, alive. The seal worked fast, clearing air, wrapping the child in his jacket, lifting him free. The child cried, thin but strong enough. Behind him, the puppy sat back on its haunches, chest heaving, watching as if to make sure the job was finished. The seal turned and met its gaze. For a moment, neither moved. Then he nodded. "Good job," he said quietly. The puppy's tail thumped once against the snow. That was enough. Sirens would come later. Questions would follow. But in that moment, on a cold mountainside, something had been proven. The puppy was not weak, not broken, not useless. It had chosen to act, and the seal understood with a clarity that settled deep in his bones. This was no longer a rescue in one direction. They were saving each other now. The town sat low and quiet beneath the mountains, as if it had learned long ago not to draw attention to itself. Snow lined the streets and tired gray walls. The sky hung heavy, undecided. The seal parked near the small veterinary clinic at the edge of the town. The puppy rested in the passenger seat, wrapped in the blanket, eyes half-lidded but alert. It watched everything now, learning. Inside, warmth smelled like disinfectant and old fur. The vet spoke gently, hands practiced, eyes sharp. She examined the puppy without hurry, tracing ribs, checking paws, listening to a heart that beat a little too fast but strong enough to argue for itself. "He's been through something," she said at last. Not accusation, not pity, just fact. The seal nodded. The puppy endured the exam without protest. No snapping, no panic, only stillness, as if it understood that surviving sometimes meant waiting. They were still there when the door opened again. The man who stepped inside carried cold with him. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, beard untrimmed, eyes hard in a way that suggested impatience rather than fear. His boots tracked melting snow across the floor without apology. His gaze locked onto the puppy. "There you are," he said. Not relief, ownership. The puppy stiffened. Not much, just enough. The seal felt it before he understood it. The shift in the room, the way old instincts rose, sharp and familiar. "That's my dog," the man continued. "You found him. I want him back." The words hit like something well-practiced, rehearsed, as if the puppy were an object misplaced, not a life nearly lost. The seal didn't answer immediately. He watched the puppy instead. The puppy did not retreat. Slowly, deliberately, it moved off the table and placed itself in front of the seal's legs. Small body, steady stance, no growl, no show of teeth, just a line drawn. The man scoffed. "See? Unstable. That's why he didn't work out." The vet straightened, eyes narrowing, but said nothing yet. The seal spoke at last. His voice was calm, even, the kind of calm built under pressure. "He wasn't trained," he said. "He was pushed." The man laughed once, sharp and humorless. "I paid for him. That makes him mine." Paid. The word tasted wrong. The seal took a step forward, not threatening, just final. "He's not going anywhere." The man moved closer, testing the space. The puppy held its ground, tail low, body tense but controlled. A warning without aggression. The seal recognized it instantly. Discipline, not fear. "Move," the man snapped, reaching out. The puppy flinched, but did not flee. The seal's hand closed around the man's wrist, firm and precise, stopping the motion without violence. "No," he said. One word. "Enough." The room had gone very still. The vet exhaled slowly. "I'm calling this in," she said, already reaching for the phone. The man cursed, yanking his arm free and backing toward the door. His confidence unraveled under the weight of witnesses and facts. "This isn't over," he spat. The seal did not follow him. He knelt instead and placed a hand on the puppy's back, felt the tension there, the courage, the trust. "It's over for you," he murmured, not to the man, but to the fear that had been allowed to live too long. The puppy leaned into the touch, just slightly. Outside, the mountains watched in silence. Inside, something shifted. For the first time, the puppy was not someone's property. And for the first time in a long while, the seal had not stepped back. The call came that night. The seal was back in the cabin, the puppy curled near the fire, bandaged and warm, finally asleep without shaking. Snow tapped lightly against the windows now, no longer angry, just persistent, like a question that refused to go unanswered. His phone vibrated on the table. He knew the number before he looked. "Yeah," he said. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional, familiar. They spoke in the language of schedules and assessments, of readiness and clearance. The past threaded through every word. Then it came. "You're cleared to return," the voice said. A pause. "But the dog doesn't come with you." The cabin felt smaller. He looked at the puppy. The firelight traced the rise and fall of its chest. A scar curved along its neck where the rope had been. It twitched once in its sleep, then settled again, as if trusting the night not to take anything else. "He's not a problem," the seal said carefully. "That's not the issue," the voice replied. "We can't make exceptions." Exceptions. He had heard that word before, too, right before someone was left behind. He closed his eyes. For a long moment, he saw the canyon again. The dust, the blood, the order that had sounded reasonable until it didn't. He opened his eyes and stood. "No," he said. Silence followed, the kind that measured consequences. "You're turning down reinstatement," the voice said. "I'm choosing not to repeat a mistake," he answered. The call ended without ceremony. The seal set the phone down and exhaled slowly, like a man stepping out of deep water. His hands shook, not with fear, but with the release of something held too long. The puppy stirred. It blinked up at him, confused, then pushed itself upright and padded across the floor. It stopped at his feet, looked up, and wagged its tail once. Small, uncertain, hopeful, he crouched and rested his forehead against the puppy's head. "Guess it's you and me," he said softly. Outside, the wind shifted direction. Snow eased. Morning came pale and clear, the mountains sharp against the sky. The seal loaded the truck, movement steady, mind strangely quiet. They drove, not away from responsibility, but toward a different kind of it. Days passed, calls were returned, paperwork moved slowly, people asked questions that carried no real weight. Then another call came, a new voice this time, older, thoughtful. "We're starting something," the voice said. "A pilot program. Operators with combat stress. Dogs that didn't fit standard roles." The seal looked at the puppy, now sitting straighter, eyes brighter, watching the world with measured calm. "What kind of program?" he asked. "One that understands not everything broken needs to be fixed," the voice replied. "Some things just need the right partner." The seal smiled, just barely. "We're in," he said. The puppy's tail wagged harder this time, thumping against the floor like punctuation. The order had been clear. So had the choice. And for once, they pointed in the same direction. Healing did not arrive all at once. It came in small, ordinary moments that did not announce themselves. The mornings were the hardest. The seal would wake before dawn, breath shallow, heart already racing, as if the day had begun with an alarm only he could hear. For years, this was how it had been. Sleep ending not in rest, but in vigilance. Now, there was weight against his leg. The puppy, no longer quite so small, slept curled beside the bed, back pressed to the floor, one paw touching his boot. Not guarding, not working, just there. Some mornings, when the memories came too fast, the dog lifted its head and watched him, eyes steady, unblinking. It did not try to fix anything. It did not demand attention. It stayed. They trained, but not the way people imagined. There were no shouted commands, no punishment, no force disguised as discipline. They walked the forest trails instead, slowly, repeatedly. The seal learned the dog's tells, the pause before a decision, the way its ears shifted with the wind, how it circled once before lying down, always positioning itself where it could see both exits and him. The dog learned the man's rhythms, how his shoulders tightened before memories surfaced, how his breath changed, how stillness meant struggle, not calm. When the seal froze, the dog leaned in. When the dog hesitated, the seal waited. Progress was measured not in speed, but in trust. The pilot program began quietly, away from cameras and speeches. A few men, a few Ds, no promises. Just work. Evaluators watched closely. Clipboards, notes, raised eyebrows. The dog passed every test by refusing to perform. It didn't rush, didn't bark on command, didn't force contact. Instead, it assessed. It waited. It chose. When paired with a younger operator who hadn't slept properly in weeks, the dog lay beside him and stayed there, breathing slow and even. The man's hands stopped shaking, his shoulders lowered. No one had ordered that. No one could have. The seal stood back, arms crossed, something warm pressing behind his ribs. This wasn't obedience. It was presence. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The dog grew stronger. Its coat thickened. The scars faded from angry red into pale reminders. It no longer startled at distant sounds. It read the world carefully, the way the seal did now, alert, but no longer braced for impact. The seal slept longer, not always peacefully, but longer. When nightmares came, they did not knock him flat. He had an anchor now. Sometimes that anchor rested its head on his knee. Sometimes it simply matched his breathing until the moment passed. They were not cured. They were practiced at staying when it would have been easier to retreat. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the trees and the training grounds emptied, the seal sat on the steps with the dog at his side. The air smelled of pine and thawing earth. He scratched behind the dog's ears, thoughtful. "You know," he said quietly, "you were never the problem." The dog looked up, tail sweeping once against the ground. For the first time, the seal allowed himself to believe the words applied to both of them. Spring arrived without ceremony. The snow did not vanish overnight. It softened. It loosened its grip, turning from walls into water, from silence into sound. The forest breathed again, slow and patient, as if it had always known winter would pass. The seal stood outside the cabin one morning, watching meltwater trace thin paths through the dirt. His jacket hung open. The air was cold, but no longer cruel. Bizikim sat the dog. No longer a puppy, not fully grown either, balanced, solid, awake in the world. Its coat shone dark in the sunlight, scars faded but visible if you knew where to look. The dog's ears lifted at distant sounds, then settled. Nothing startled it anymore. Nothing demanded panic. They had learned the difference. The call had come 2 days earlier, not an order this time, an invitation. The program was expanding. Search work, support roles, teams built on trust instead of force. They wanted the seal and the dog together, not as an exception, but as a model. He hadn't answered right away. He'd looked down at the dog, who met his gaze steadily. No question in its eyes. Only readiness. "We'll go," he'd said, not asking, deciding. Now, they stood at the edge of the trees. The seal adjusted his gear, movement smooth, unhurried, familiar but lighter. The weight he carried now was chosen. The dog rose and stepped to his side. No leash. They waited for a moment, listening to wind move through branches, to birds testing their voices, to the quiet that followed hard seasons. The seal took a breath. Then he stepped forward. The dog moved with him, stride matching stride, neither leading nor following. They disappeared into the green shadow of the forest, not as a man and an animal rescued from winter, but as a unit shaped by it. He did not look back. He didn't need to. Some miracles don't arrive as thunder or fire from the sky. Sometimes they come quietly. Through a life the world tried to discard, or a moment where choosing to stay changes everything. And in choosing each other, they had both found their way forward. Sometimes, God doesn't send miracles wrapped in thunder or fire. Sometimes, He sends them quietly. Through a life the world has already given up on. Through a moment where choosing to stay becomes an act of faith. A wounded man and a forgotten dog did not save the world. They simply stayed when it would have been easier to walk away. And in that staying, God did what He so often does. He turned pain into purpose and loss into new life. Maybe in your own life, you've felt discarded, overlooked, too tired, too broken, or too late to matter. But this story reminds us of a truth Scripture has always whispered. No one is unseen, no prayer goes unheard, and sometimes the miracle is not that God removes the storm, but that He sends someone into it to walk beside us. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who may be walking through a hard season. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Your words matter more than you know. And if you believe that faith, love, and second chances still have a place in this world, subscribe to the channel so these stories can continue to reach those who need hope. May God bless you and keep you. May He protect your home, your loved ones, and every quiet battle you're fighting. And may you never forget, even in the coldest storm, you are not alone.